Della, welcome to the California Donut Economic Coalition show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're rocking and rolling with this with the intention to create more understanding and flow and maybe more conversations around the donut, right?
Absolutely. Happy to be in conversation with you and happy to be in conversation about the donut.
Yeah, and what's the deal with this? Like, why? Like, how do we even approach? Should we talk about how we got here, or where we're going, or where should we, or should we just talk about the present moment? How should
Mm.
we flow with this?
And even in the present moment, we'll find the past and the future. So it's all connected. That sounds like a good layout. Why have we come to what we're doing, where we are now, and where we're headed? I love that. Classic.
Classic. So
Classic
what?
storyline.
Classic storyline. Yeah, we're gonna have to add a little bit of hero's
Yes.
journey a little bit. Like where are the different challenges and also the wins and stuff. So let me
The
throw it your way.
mentors.
Mentors. So let's toss it your way. I'm gonna toss the energy ball, the donut to you. So yeah, tell us your heroine's journey into this space right here.
Yeah. So I like you, am in the Bay Area and grew up with just a lot of rising inequality and concern for, yeah, mostly economic, insecurity and inequality, and particularly related to what is funded in our economy. And that's because I was a rape crisis counselor as one of my first roles, and I just was feeling like, why isn't this work prioritized or funded, particularly while other things around me were heavily funded. And so I was just looking at that imbalance, and I have gone on a journey called an upstream journey to the root causes. And one of those things that I've found when I go to like the root causes of a lot of challenges of our time, including homelessness, inequality, climate change, division, is what we are taught about economics, right? What is the economy? What's the goal of the economy? How we define progress, right? What is wealth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All of that. And so that led me to study alternative economics and to become a renegade economist. And that name, renegade economist, is actually something that Kate Rayworth, the kind of, initiator of Doughnut economics, was called. She was called a renegade economist, and I was like, yes, I so resonate with that frame of interrogating, challenging, questioning mainstream economic thinking. And so, like Kate, I was like, I'm going to aspire to be a renegade economist, and donut economics is one of these realms that really challenges mainstream economic thinking and offers alternative ways to think about economics, practice economics, alternative goal of economics, alternative metrics. So just super inspiring. But Indy, what about you? What brought you to donut economics?
I mean, first, before I even say that, I want to also like share that Della also has the Upstream podcast, which I feel is such a great a tool. And in fact, what I feel is like it's a tool for you to continue building your understanding
100%.
and awareness, right?
Yes,
In this.
very
So
much so.
it's cool because I also use my podcast to build my also understanding and awareness as well. So I understand that. So I do recommend folks do tune into the podcast because it is really inspiring, but it also is very highlights grassroots leaders and economic leaders and people who don't usually get mainstream recognition for what the work they're doing and actually what their transformation they're actually leading. So, definitely want to throw that in there. And then yeah, just there's all this. I mean, it's really important that to highlight that you are an embodiment of the focusing on social indicators for both individual and collective aspects and ecological indicators. Like you care about both of those spaces in your work, not just in terms of economics, but also in terms of just relations and psychology and personal development and collective development. So I want to throw that your way because that's also what brings me to donut economics, right? I feel like the very fact that in this donut, right, like when we look at it, it's like, oh wow, there's like these indicators within and these indicators outside. Like as I started studying, like what are the systemic problems and issues in the world? I mean, I was in medical school, so I saw inherently when I was in medical school, we weren't healing people. Like people were coming back for the same problems, and whenever I tried to engage with my teachers and also my seniors, right, in the hospital, there wasn't an interest a intellectual curiosity to solve those recurring chronic problems. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, so I saw that in the healthcare space. And then when I left the healthcare space, I went to the education space and I saw the same patterns in the education space. We weren't solving the problems that were limiting people's learning developments and actually actuating people's, I mean, I don't even think we access how brilliant humans are, right? From the different ways that we're brilliant, and especially in the education space, right? Or imagination gets extracted, right? Spirituality gets extracted, ecology gets extracted out of our education system, right? Which was such a bummer because who knows what we could do with children and teenagers and our academia spaces. So I saw the same problems in education. And then I got into like Wall Street, and I'm like, oh my God, this is super toxic. Like totally soup. Nobody's really healthy. Like everybody's pretending like they're healthy, going to the gym, but everybody's mentally and spiritually very anemic, right? And very unhealthy. So I got there. Then I started doing corporate wellness. And I started doing corporate wellness. I saw like in every industry, the nonprofit industry, the for-profit industry, everybody, the same patterns of like unwell being. Like inherently in the decision makers, in the choice making, like from the very basis of making decisions and choice making, people are not well. So like inherently you can't make good decisions for any of these things. So you go anywhere inside of this circle and outside the circle, all of the agencies and nonprofits, like, I started noticing they're all suffering from not being healthy themselves. And so for me, when I came across donut economics, I'm like, whoa, here's a holistic medical report for any system to acknowledge. Here's like, okay, let's just see the holistic medical report of like what's wrong so that we could do something about it. But didn't really have that up until this thing right here.
Yeah, and I want to highlight the word health that you brought up, and I love your framing of the donut as a holistic medical report, right? As you're showing the one for California, right? It gives you, yeah, an assessment. And I also love that you connect and in your own story, and also that the donut connects the social and the ecological health. Because, I mean, as you're probably familiar, sometimes our movements can feel very divided, siloed, and even like at odds, right? And what the donut does is it says, yes, meeting of all human needs in a community is vital for human and, human well-being and health. However, it's not just about meeting human needs. That's not the goal of the economy. We also need to be in consideration of the needs of our planet, of our ecosystems, and see how connected they are. That if our environment is unhealthy, we are unhealthy, and vice versa, right? So I love how you're sharing that holistic indicator of health and how the donut really reflects that in its image.
Yeah, and I feel that's important too because like even in our personal lives, right? If we don't know what's wrong, if we can't like actually look at ourselves and see like where are we unhealthy physically, where are we unhealthy medically, I mean mentally, right? And spiritually, if we can't evaluate that, you literally can't take the actions to do something about it, right?
Absolutely.
So here's like a snapshot for California, right? But here's the thing for me, like I think you brought up a really good point about divisiveness. And I think I feel like you have a lot of insight from your podcast because you do interview a lot of people that are both bridging divides and sometimes increasing the divides, right? And I feel like what there's something nuanced about the donut, right? Like the donut economics. Like, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit drinking the Kool-Aid of the donut economics also, but I'm also very wary about drinking Kool-Aid and joining any cult too. I'm always studying cults and, in my culture, we're very like against like, joining any cult and being in the cult of just the interconnectedness, actually that being the cult, the dominant cult. But for me, like looking at this thing and actually experimenting with bringing it up with people who are really hardcore capitalists, with people who are hardcore socialists, with people who are from rural communities, with people who are from like urban communities. I haven't faced resistance when I'm speaking to them about the donut economics being a tool for them to fix things in their community.
Yes, absolutely. I really see it as the reason why we chose the word coalition, right? To say that this is a collective effort. It really is a movement and a movement organizer. And so organizations, community groups, businesses, etc., can find their work in the donut. And then when we start to see our work in the donut, we can also recognize the importance of other people's work in the donut. And we have a shared common goal, which is getting us within the donut, where we've met the human needs and we're within the needs of our ecosystems. So I agree that the donut does kind of like cut different divides and really makes it accessible. This idea of regenerative economics or well-being economics, post-growth economics, it's really inviting and also like since there's the visual, you can like see what the goal is. But I agree with you. I find that it doesn't have as much antagonism or resistance that other ideas can elicit in some folks.
Yeah, and I think that's important too right now because there's almost like I'm feeling the spiritual intonations of actually like leaning into ideas and poetry and storytelling and music that is unifying, right?
Mhm.
Because there's like social media and all these different dynamics are really polarized. Everything's pushing towards polarization.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when you say that, I think of social media in particular, the siloing and the way that people are pushed towards, you know, extremes and how we have very little opportunity to have dialogue, like real true listening and conversation with people we may disagree with. And when we don't even know someone who's on the quote unquote other side, there's no way we can empathize or even like perceive what their viewpoint is or how they may have come to that realization. And again, it is on purpose that
Uh-huh.
people are polarized to those extremes. So I really hear you on that divide.
So on that note, what are the implications of like what we're doing here? Like from your perspective, I mean, I know you're the presentation lead. So folks out there, if you want to bring presentations into donut economic presentations and even this, all the work that we've done in actually developing all the data and turning it into actual different donuts for different spaces. Actually, like there's so much in-depth research and data about all this stuff. But Della can present those things in your company, your school, your university, your public agency, right? Those are all places that we've already done stuff and we look to do stuff. But what do you, from your perspective, like what are the implications of what could happen if there was not just more awareness, but what can be done practically with this knowledge?
Yeah. So I heard you say awareness, and so let's start with that is first just knowing that there are alternatives to mainstream economics. So that there is a movement called regenerative economics or well-being economics, post-growth economics, ecological economics, to just know that there are folks kind of challenging the growth paradigm, right? That growth is of a valid end goal of an economy and that the only thing we wish to grow is, you know, GDP or gross domestic product or total exchange of goods and services, shifting that to what is it that we actually want in our economy? What's actually the priority? And when you ask people around the world what is most important, they come up with things more like happiness, health, well-being, and not just for themselves, but for their communities, and not just for humans, but for the more than human world
Wait,
too.
wait, Della, are you saying people don't want tumors? Is that like is that what I'm hearing that the other side of it that people do not want tumors, right? Because that's what growth does. Like uncontrolled growth is a tumor.
Exactly. Yeah. Growth is the ideology of a cancer cell. That's an Edward Abbey quote. But yes, exactly. And so that there's even just knowing that awareness that there's movements around the world who are asking this question, what should be the goal of the economy? What do we actually want it to be?
Right.
And then after that, how do we then guide our efforts, our work, our labor, our production, our care? How do we guide that
Mhm.
towards getting us within the donut?
Mhm.
Right. And that's that practical piece that you're talking about. And Kate calls it in the donut the regenerative and distributive economy. And so that kind of comes after the snapshot, the holistic medical report, to just know where we're at. Like you said, that's a really key thing. How are we doing? And that can be shocking. For example, our donut development team in creating the California donut showed that we are under in 100% of social indicators in California, and we are over in all but one. I think ozone layer was the only one where we're you know we were within bounds. And so that can be hard to hear and shocking, but it also just identifies how off we've been in what we've been prioritizing and focusing on and how much work we need to do. And so then once we know that, it's a collaborative, collective effort to get us within the donut. And that's when we can bring in the fun and the exciting and the beautiful tools, technologies, and ideas all around the world
Mhm.
of people who are working with labor differently, money differently, housing, farming, education, right? Because all these elements can help us get within the donut. It is that collective effort. So that's what I would say to the practical. But what would you add? How would you go from like this theory of like get us within the donut to tangible, practical, how can people actually do this work to get within the donut? Because people ask that all the time in presentations and in general. Okay, like great idea, great theory, but what does this mean for me, for my community?
Right. Yeah, it's I feel there's like I feel we have to also recognize and acknowledge like where in history, when and where have people led movements that transformed the inequalities and imbalances in society. Right. I think that's like for me, I like study that also in my culture. Like we grew up sharing stories. Like my mom, even to this day, when I go spend time with my mom, she tells me stories about what saints did like a generation ago. Like in her, like when she was a child, what like a saint did in a nearby village when there was like a plague or there was like some outbreak or what like there's like constantly these amazing stories of saints and sages and mystics that do incredible things. And sometimes we might think of them as inventors later on or artists, right? But like maybe they were actually like doing incredible transformational stuff at the social level. And so how do they do that? What do they do? I can't help but keep going back. It's like so obvious and clear to me how important it is to create spaces of festival and celebration and how those spaces radically connect people like really quickly. They like build this like beautiful social glue, right? That you can't do in a conference and you can't do in a government building and you can't do it in a like there's like these like stuffy spaces that you just can't build that social glue, right? That like builds different cultures, different religions, different points of view and philosophies, different economic classes, brings people together. So for me, what I feel like the practical thing of this that I've actually witnessed because I've been experimenting with this is actually hosting gatherings, talking about the California Donut Economic Coalition and talking about our research while doing ecological work, right? Like actually bringing balance to the ecological things, like actually doing stuff that brings balance to that and things that bring balance to the social foundation, like actually creating those gatherings. I'm noticing that when I invite the policymakers to those spaces, they are literally reflecting back to me in those gatherings. We have never gathered like this with the community before. Like we've never gathered with the community to do something actively with them to improve the ecological stuff or the social stuff. They're usually sitting behind the desk, getting phone calls, getting emails. Most of those are hateful or angry. And if they are sometimes helpful, they're coming with agendas because people are donating or doing whatever. It's never like an invitation, hey, come be with the community and do something about the social foundation together where it feels hopeful. It doesn't feel despairing. It feels like, oh, actually, we could do something when the community comes together in different forms and different aspects like this, bringing together different aspects. So for me, the practical thing is actually generating more of these spaces. These what do they call it? Like the third, fifth. There's I don't know the language, like the fifth, whatever, the fifth wheel. I was about to say fifth wheel, but like those spaces where like it is like beyond ideology, right? However, everybody can bring their ideology, and there's no fear and there's no hate in those spaces, right? It's actually like beyond hate and fear. And if you bring the hate and fear, I'm very particular about like navigating and becoming better Aikido, emotional Aikido artist about moving that. Like this is not a space of victim. Like it's not victim, or it's not a space of like being like sharing trauma bonding, or it's not a space of complaining, right? Yes, let's identify these problems, but now let's move into the solutions. Let's practice imagination. Let's practice cooperation. Let's practice synchronicity and synchronization because that's also where our nervous systems actually relax and vibe, and we can actually problem solve even better because we're not in a fight or flight.
Yeah. One thing I'm hearing is, it's less helpful to look at the donut and say, okay, where can I affect change? And more to say, how can we affect change? And we will do so much together doing it together. And even if you have an organization or a project that is looking at one area of the donut, to collaborate with the other areas of the donut is necessary to get us within the donut. We can't just have housing needs met and nothing else, right? So it really moves us from the individual to the collective. And then I'm also hearing from you the importance of head, heart, and hands activism or action. And you're so right that even from our mainstream education and how we're socialized often as workers, it really is from the neck up, right? And that's what you're talking about, like behind the desk, the talking, the phone calls, the theory, the papers. And what I love about, the Eco Fest that you're offering and that you're, calling into this work is like, yes, let's see the image and let's understand the donut. And there is some speaking and some head that needs to happen to be able to get that. But then there's also the heart work, which that's the poetry, that's the song, that's the uplifting, that's the inspiration, that's the smile, that's the connecting.
Mhm.
And then there's the hands. Like we can actually move the donut in this day together. Like we can plant, pollinator plants, or we can,
Mhm.
do some ecosystem restoration if
Mhm.
that's what's necessary, or, build a space for the community. And so that head, heart, and hands, bringing that together is such a win-win, and it just brings our whole bodies along with it. So,
Yeah, it's funny because I recently had a really popular like a thing go viral, a post I made about our over consulting culture. Like we are like especially in the Western world, like right? Like it's a big deal. Like the consulting is like a big thing. And like you go to any third world country or anywhere third, I hate even that language. Ugh. But you go to any community around the world where they don't have a choice but to do something about this donut in their own community. Like they're actually doing, like they're not like waiting, they're not doing more research to do the things. They're doing the things, right? And or like any of the farming work that I've done over the years, when I've like been in relationship with regenerative farmers or indigenous farmers, like they actually are doing the action that's balancing these things in real time. Like they don't do the research and then do the action. They're like doing the action and then doing the research while they're doing the action. Right. And I think somehow for us, we need to like start also reimagining how can we like also, I think you brought this up one time and that I really loved, Della, was like, I've heard that you can restate that the quote, but like we pay attention to what we research or remember that thing? But like, what if we research the transformation? What would happen?
yeah, yeah, we are attentive to what we measure. And I heard it from Dr. Haven To, who is a mentor of mine from the Gross National Happiness Movement, I would say a sibling movement to Donna economics. And yeah, when we start to notice what we're grateful for, right, it orients our minds, as you know, neuroplasticity towards more abundance or gratitude or love or care. So absolutely just starting to see the changes, of what's happening, starting to pay attention to the transformation. I mean, Joanna Macy talks about how we're in, the great unraveling and the great turning at the same time, So it's not about a false sense of optimism or hope, but it's about returning our attention towards what we can do and what is working and continuing to grow and to water and to strengthen that.
Yeah, and I love that. I think you researched somebody recently. I think our future answer. What was that? Being good future. But there was What was that? Asabia?
Yes. Yeah. So we're talking
That
about Roman Krasarnik, who's actually the husband of Kate Rayworth. Great author, but yeah, he wrote a book on how to be a good ancestor. And you're right. He had like different ways that different cultures around the world are looking at this.
right? And that what is that? What was that term? Asabi? What is it like? Because I feel like that's why I feel so called to do the Eco Fest because we don't have we're like we don't have that glue right now. And so how do we build that glue so we can affect change into this?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact reference. We'll have to listen back.
Asabia or some word like that, right? But anyways, so I feel also, in answering your question and kind of like c continuing to circle around that too is I'm starting to orient like you as you know Cosmic Labyrinth we've been organizing festivals and eco restoration festivals during even we started during the pandemic, right? Just creating spaces because nobody else was creating spaces for people to come together in nature and to actually work together in nature and build trust again with each other from an intergenerational, interspiritual, intercultural. But what I'm noticing as we look at this thing, and like you said, like some of the researchers in our collective, in our coalition, how they were like, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. It's almost like creates more, what is it called? Like talk about mental health, right? Like it's like when you start to see this and to see the challenges and the problems, it's like it starts to weigh on you. For me, I can't help but notice this is kind of like a disaster. This is like a depiction that California is in disaster.
Yes.
So like in a way, I feel more called these days to kind of like start to leverage these eco fests into like disaster festivals. I know that sounds terrible, but like even in ancient cultures, and even not, some of them are still around, they were doing rituals and festivals around disasters and actually to mitigate the harms of disaster, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and as you know, Kate Raworth says, when we look at an economy in this way, there is no developed country, right? So we're all in disaster. There's no country or community that is meeting all the human needs and staying within the needs of their ecosystem. So it really is, pretty pervasive and really a call to action. Like this is the moment to step up, to have our labor, our inspiration, our time go towards this collective effort, And yeah, we could see it as a downer, or we can see it as like, let's rise to the occasion. And I love this idea of better than found. Can we leave everyone and everything better than found? So even in our lifetimes, like what can we do to move this donut to be a little bit more kind and gentler to the environment and a little bit more equitable and resilient for the humans. So yeah, we're all in disaster. Let's name it. Let's feel that grief, that anger, that hopelessness, that frustration, and then let's turn our attention towards how do we together get within the donut.
I love that. That's beautiful. And it's actually what I've noticed is nature and humans and animals and fungi and all the beings and the beings that we can't see or feel. There's phenomenology. Like it's so fun. Like even especially when we flow with nature, like when there's stewardship with nature, things happen. Like it's crazy. Like I've been a part of projects where like we were doing river restoration and we were just getting rid of invasive plants. We didn't bring in any like salmon seeds or like whatever. We didn't bring in any physical salmon. Just getting rid of invasive plants,
Mm.
the salmon started coming back phenomenologically, right? I think like also the same project, the beavers started making their way. Where were the beavers? Like we don't even know where the beavers are, and they started coming showing up. So I think we need to recognize that when we are in right relationship, when we're actually doing the actions together as we, and we're not getting in the way of ourselves by being like, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll do that next month or next month. No, we actually just do the action together. Nature also responds phenomenologically. Like I can't explain it.
Yes. Yeah. And one way I've heard this described is like, yes, there is our ecological footprint, which is our negative or harm impact on the earth. And there's a great movie, No Impact Mo Man, Colin Beverman, who says, I'm going to try to live a year with no impact on the planet. Right. And of course, he can't do that because that's impossible. But one of the insights from his year of trying to live lightly or with a very small ecological footprint is, oh my gosh, there's also my ecological handprint. And instead of just thinking about what to not do or how to reduce, it's like, how can I contribute? And like you're saying, the ripple effects are unknown to us, how much of a benefit that is. And you gave some ecological examples, but I'll give the same in the social realm. Just by listening to someone or offering a resource or even being generous, right? Giving gifts, like the impact, the ripple effects that that causes in the web of life, we cannot measure or even see. So, yeah, it's like, what if we turn towards what is our ecological handprint? How could I contribute today? How can I contribute with my community? Yeah, we have no idea what impact that'll have on the donut unless we measure it, and then we can start to then we start to track it, which is why the donut is so cool that a lot of people, including the California Donut Economics Coalition, are starting to measure that because yes, we have how we're doing now, this holistic health report of, pretty dire news of how we're underperforming and overshooting. But, keep doing our work, keep showing up, keep doing these resilience festivals and all of our organizing and collective efforts. Let's see where we are in 5 years, right? And we can see the ripple effects of our actions. It'll be cool, very cool.
That is really cool. I've been getting some support from an amazing colleague. She's a data scientist, works for the California Department of Health, and she reached out to me because she's like, I'm so exhausted of doing research about what's wrong with the health
Mm.
system in California, and she reached out to me. She's like, can you help me like like some like she's like her and one of her business partners started a company where they can consult on data science for nonprofits and other companies. But she like reached out to me, be like, can you help me like use positive psychology to do these surveys? So with these disaster to resilience gatherings, we've been doing these surveys at the end of them, but we intentionally have worded those surveys in with not just positive psychology, but actually like implanting where we're going with the research. So like people are actually like it's really cool to think about it that way. Like actually, like surveys don't always have to be evaluating, and data doesn't always have to be evaluating what's wrong. It can be actually nudging us towards what is the potential transformation.
Yeah. And even in this activity of doing the California donut, the creative endeavor of saying, okay, what does housing mean? Right? Like just exploring that, I think is a useful thing. Like, what does it mean to have that threshold met? Right? And you can get really nuanced. Like it's not just how many people are homeless. Yes, you know what I mean, like numeric, but what is a home? What is quality housing? What is quality education? What does like actual political voice mean? Right? You can build in some of these nuances to the data. And that's why I love you mentioned, you know, things that unify and the donut does that, but it has unity and diversity. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I love about the donut is that yes, our donut of California can be looked at in comparison or can be looked at, you know, yeah, looking at Melbourne donut or the Scotland donut or Amsterdam donut, but we've also been able to customize it in place.
Yeah.
And I love that. And that exercise of coming together and asking what is most important to us and
Yeah.
like what would it actually mean to have that need met for our ecological system or our human system.
Yeah, it's not homogenous, and I think that's why I've noticed that it hasn't it hasn't triggered anybody in that way. It hasn't blocked anyone because it is heterogeneous. It can fit, and even I've noticed like if you just adjust the language when the social foundation, the ecological ones to fit the people who it potentially can speak to, whether it's a farmer or if it's somebody in the urban space, the adjusting the language, it still works. You just adjust the language, you know?
Yeah. And I'll share one complexity that we're working with in San Jose. So after the creation of the California donut, some more local, smaller sites have really taken off, and definitely want you to touch on what's happening in San Diego. But San Jose, I'm a little bit more connected with, and one of the things that we're really looking at is one of San Jose's strengths is diversity, right? Is a very, very diverse city. And so how could we create a donut portrait that captures that nuance,
Mhm.
right? That tells the story of not just how many homeless people are there, but more like what's that context
Yep.
within homelessness? You know, can even bring in the historical, right? Or the intersectionality
Yep.
dynamics to this. So, yeah, I just wanted to add like you can really customize in terms of place, in terms of history, and really have that unity, but also diversity. What's going on in San Diego? Do you want to tell us that
So
story?
San Diego is super cool, right? Because San Diego is like a very right-wing military and industrial pharmaceutical complex, right? It's a huge, massive industry there, right? And imprint. And what we've noticed there, the San Diego Donut Alliance, which has formed also as a continued offshoot of what we're doing, and they're really resourcing us, is also that's more focused on the county. San Diego County, which is really smart because the county also does so much work when it comes to like farming and land use and water and healthcare and education. That's all within that context, housing as well. But what I've noticed with that is the intention to actually like they have been really smart about wanting to like bring in the academia, right? Bring in the nonprofit industry, bring in the for-profit. Like they actually one of the partners is conscious capitalism. So they're bringing in the local entrepreneurs and the big entrepreneurs there in San Diego. And then also the military and the government, like they're bringing in the military too, which is like what? And then also the indigenous community. Because I think well, I just learned this at one of the meetings we had down there was that actually San Diego County has the most concentration in America has the most diversity of tribes
Wow.
out of any place in America. So bringing in the indigenous community too, because they also need to be a part of this donut conversation as well, because they actually might have knowledge and wisdom, but also they're impacted by all this stuff way more than everybody else, right? But both it's this and that, right? So we can access that ecological wisdom that they have to regenerate and restore some of these things and maybe even create phenomenology from it. But what I've loved about that space is I brought up the festival, the Eco Fest and the Donut Fest, and they love it too because it is once again bringing everybody together in a way we're celebrating, and it's cool that in a space that's very right-wingish, they're also wanting to celebrate and bring people together and bring in the diversity in a different way, right? That isn't like blocking it off. Oh, this is like anti-hate, anti-this, anti-this. How can we be pro something that actually brings everybody in? And that's been cool to see that in that context out there because it's a very different dynamic than the Bay Area.
Yeah. And maybe I'll pick up on that and share a little bit more about San Jose. So, founded or really stewarded by a mother of children in San Jose who's a climate activist, Lisa, who is very inspiring and really bringing in more of like the climate justice angle, not just climate but justice and equity as well. And so a little bit more of a grassroots movement to that work and also really that coalition building. So really trying to bring in the diverse voices. And we've already had some beautiful collaborations that have emerged. For example, in San Jose, part of San Jose State University, their work is that they do a pain index. So they collect data, the students and staff collect data on how much pain there is in their economy. And it's actually very much intersectional and equity focused. And so, they're already starting to do some of that work. And they have found that unfortunately, pain is going up, right? So they're seeing that and asking, why is that? And so that's a really interesting component to it. So they're a natural collaborator because a lot of their data points we can then utilize in the donut. And also we can also say, what the donut analyzes or looks at that they might not, right? So there's some balancing there. But we've also been collaborating with, yeah, the local government there, as well as some community groups. So we're a little bit newer in the process, but this year hope to create a portrait of San Jose and hope to also do a lot of storytelling. This is something inspired by the Melbourne donut. I don't know if you know that one or want to pull that one up, but the Melbourne donut has their portrait that you can click on and it pops out these stories of people's lives to kind of bring the donut data to life, which is a very cool, facet of this. So we're going to be trying to do that as well.
Whoa. So you can like go here and you can be like bing and then it goes, oh,
Exactly. So right there it says stories. There's three stories that are connected to nitrogen and phosphorus loading, right? Because that can feel so abstract, right? But if you bring in those stories, you get more of a sense of what that means and how this is doing.
cool. Yeah, that's so, yeah, and that's also one of the things that one of the reason why we'll have more of these conversations is that we do want to encourage folks to donate to what we're doing. We want to generate maybe new, like maybe dynamic revenue sources that can actually, like if we're presenting at a college or university or presenting at a business, even a California business, that money that is that they spend to have us present, we're going to use it to build this interactive
Yes.
donut. And I also wonder, like I love this, but I wonder also how we can like also create some like dynamic ways for civic engagement for different things that people care about. So like if somebody cares about arts and culture, maybe we offer like for us for California Donut, we like people can click on an organization that we partner with where they can actually start creating positive impact. And maybe even if they do go and do that, oh my God, now Della, I'm getting excited. If they go and do that, it actually they can see that red go down.
Wow. Yeah, that would be incredible.
Just saying, I'm a big game person, right? So if we
Yeah.
gamify our civic
Yeah.
engagement, it'd be awesome.
Gamify and also shorten feedback loops, right? The donut is all about systems thinking, right? Thinking systemically. And part of our challenge is our feedback loops are so long, right? We'll like create a policy and it'll be like, what did that actually do? Or like, how do we, but if we can like shorten our feedback loops, right? And show like this is the challenge. If I go in this direction and support this cause or this effort. Like I am moving the needle, right? Or moving the donut in a way that is getting us within the donut in the safe and just space for humanity.
Yeah, I love that. And that might be something, I don't know. You might be speaking at the commons, finding the commons, and there's a lot of people, especially Silicon Valley in the Bay Area, where we're in like the epicenter of like the technology. And at the moment, technology is not is dominantly harmful if I was, in my opinion, right? However, that's because a lot of the people who are running those things, making decisions are just out of touch, right? With these challenges, right? They're out of touch with all these challenges. But if we started developing technology with awareness and understanding of these challenges and being in touch, what could we make? It's amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love E.F. Schumacher's take on appropriate technology. Like technology in itself is not bad, but let technology serve the well-being of people on the planet. And, part of the challenge of technology is the business model that it's in and the growth imperative and the financial models. And so, fortunately, donut economics offers tools and techniques on all those levels. So this kind of idea of donut economics being post-growth, I just want to say is not just at the huge level, the systemic level like California. It can be at your business level, it can be at your community level, or even at the individual level. And I love that this is something you and I, Indy, have chatted about is like, how does a person embody the donut?
Mhm.
Right? And post-growth thinking or post-growth living. And, I want to ask you what that means for you. But, one thing that comes up for me is like, yeah, what is the goal of my life? Or what is my aspiration? Or what's important to me? What am I measuring? Right? What is enoughness? What is gratitude? What is sufficiency? Right?
Yeah,
And like really trying that on in a lived experience. And then
totally.
also like, what are my holistic indicators of success or progress or well-being? Because if we only go with what is told to us, right, from mainstream society, it's like, how much money are you making? Are you going up, like climbing the ladder, right? Like all this kind of stuff.
How many wrinkles you don't have?
That's true. Yes, exactly. And I just love asking people, and so I ask anyone who's listening, what is true wealth? What is true wealth to you? And I know one thing that you do is that you lead laughter workshops. So like, a day you could be like, how much did I laugh today? Or how open to laughter was I today? Right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're not even open to it. So, Indy, what would you say about embodying post-growth living or embodying the donut in a lived way?
I mean, for me, it's about like it's really about living a spiritual life,
Mm.
and spirituality not in the context of religions per se, but more like the idea, the feeling, the awareness. I mean, because it's funny because I can go into the science of it, and I can also go into the mystical woo-woo stuff, right? Like, but like there is a deep interconnectedness of things, Like our body literally would not be able to, you would not be able to be a healthy human being if there wasn't interconnectedness between all the cells, the microorganisms that are not even a part, they're like a whole different genetic material, and they're also collaborating and interacting with our body. So like you can see like we're healthy and resilient physically because we are interconnected within, right? And the more we are interconnected with the surroundings and the people around us, and also literally the physical surroundings and environment and nature and our foods, it also generates more health and safety and just space, right? So it's like you could see like how we are a donut. Then you get into like the really woo-woo stuff, not even woo-woo, scientific stuff. What scientific woo? I don't even know what to call it these days. But we're also a toroidal field. The donut is a toroid. So like we literally, the human beings are a toroidal field because we have a magnetic field around us, right? And that actually is called the peripersonal space if you want to talk about the aura, but the scientific term is peripersonal space, which we actually have a field around us, which includes bacteria actually too, where we're emitting all these things. So for me, it's important from a spiritual context to live and be an awareness of that donut that I'm generating all the time. That, like, actually, however I'm feeling, however I'm being, it's actually affecting things around me all the time, including the food I eat, but also the people I love and I care about. Maybe the strangers also. Who knows? What if my field actually can also affect a stranger that I pass by? And instead of me being all caught up in my own drama and my own thing, when they look at me, I like reflect back a smile that I'm safe and just, And they can feel that safe and justness and they reflect it back. And it's like a moment, who knows of what's possible from that, just that small interaction. But also, I feel like in that understanding awareness of interconnectedness, it's like, how can then I not care about the imbalance in nature, the imbalance in the air, the imbalance in the water, the imbalance in the political voice, like I can't help but be a part of that fractal possibility, right? Like if I just have that spiritual awareness that we're interconnected, or that ecological awareness that we're spiritually connected, that we're interconnected, or the biological awareness that we're I mean, you go in any direction you want, the economic, like, it doesn't matter what direction you go, we're so interconnected with everything. So why not be proactive about it, right? It's almost like makes sense. It's almost like a karma yoga, like a cause and effect, like aspect of it. Like if I'm not being proactive about it, then I'm being reactive about it. And I've never noticed in my life where being reactive to things is actually makes me happier, healthier, etc. You know? Usually that's happening because, oh my God, it's imbalance and it's like you're just like trying to trying to survive, right? But like when I'm being proactive about stuff, I've noticed how I receive more. I receive more. And sometimes the receiving more is not about getting more money, like you said. The receiving more is I'm getting spiritual capital or I'm getting community capital where people are like, hey, come stay with us and like work with us and do stuff with us. And I'm like, doors open for me where it's like that door never would have opened if I was like, hey, can I pay you $5,000 to come, be in this space? That never would have happened. But because of that karma yoga, because that proactive behavior of this interconnected relationship, doors open, including doors these days with the government. Like this, like amazing, like how like I'm bringing imagination, civic imagination into government spaces because of that proactive nature of the interconnectedness of things. And it's funny how the government employees are like reflecting back, like, oh my God, I never even looked at my work this way before because I'm bringing in this toroidal field of interconnectedness, right? So I think there's a lot of space for us to like not just us to live it individually in ourselves, but actually like maybe this is also how our ancestors were able to survive like cataclysms and disasters and social turmoils and political turmoils and huge things that have happened in history. What if it is that they embodied the donut in those moments? What if that is the case?
Yeah, there's a beautiful Rainer Maria Rilke poem where he says, I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. And I really heard that in what you shared. And also, Kate Rayworth, who helps us kind of unlearn what we've learned about mainstream economic thinking, returns us to the etymology of economics, oikos and nomos, management of our home, and tells the story of how at first oikos nomos was management of a domestic home or a nation state home, and how economics today, 21st century economics,
Mhm,
must be about planetary home management
mhm,
because of recognizing that
mhm,
interconnectedness. And so, just for anyone who's listening who maybe is not part of San Diego, San Jose, or California, right? Just to know that we do not see those borders as where our work stops,
no,
right? Just as you were saying about the widening circles of influence and impact, one of the aspects of the donut is it says, yes, ask how California is doing at the meeting of the human needs within California, and of course, staying within the ecological bounds of the, ecological systems of California, but also ask how is California respecting the health and well-being of the people worldwide, and
yeah.
how is California either respecting or not respecting the health and well-being of the planet, right? And so I think that systemic thinking really needs to go across our borders,
Oh yeah.
and we really do need to have an awareness, particularly those of us in the global north. How are our economies impacting the global south, right? Or the rest of the world. So yeah, thank you for bringing in that interconnectedness, and I love riffing off of, like, yes, the spiritual, the energetic, but also the economic and the political. It's all very connected.
It's all super connected. And maybe that's been the psyop, for all my conspiracy folks out there who like dabble in those things. Maybe the psyop is that the segmentation or the fracture of
Yeah.
all of these ideas, right? Or these systems, like whether it's economic system, political systems, spiritual systems,
Mhm.
scientific systems, like that they're different. Like you can't bring spirituality into science. You can't bring spirituality into politics. You can't like actually like one, is that even possible? Right? And two, like why are we keep separating these things when they are so inherently interwoven?
Yeah. When I have gone on this journey upstream, at first, the first stop upstream is the isms, right? Capitalism or growth industrial complex and, patriarchy, white supremacy,
Right.
those kind of things. But then going upstream from that, it is separation. And it is this like small egoic sense of self, which in mainstream economics we'd call Homo economicus, which is still to this day taught as who we are as humans, right? We are Homo economicus, rational, self-interested beings, right? And that far upstream, and again, we're on an economic journey here, is so deeply spiritual. It is the spiritual teachings and teachers that are inviting the more ecological self, the more web of life, the interconnectedness, right? That is a deeply spiritual thing. So, yeah, for me, economics and spirituality are just so connected. Like how we see ourselves, how we see ourselves in relation with the more than human world, how we see ourselves in relation with one another is central to the economic challenges of our time. And so to recognize that and then to know the alternatives is what will alleviate us. And even though donut economics might not be like super explicit about that, it definitely has an eco spirituality feeling to it because systems thinking, like this interconnectedness, is so it's just like another side of a coin of a spiritual worldview. And you know, one person who said it incredibly well, Thich Nhat Hanh, interbeing, right? We inter are. Like that's the same thing as what we're saying with systems thinking.
Yeah, and it's funny as you're even sharing this, I can't help but also recognize patterns, right? And like evaluate and studying patterns. And it's so paradoxical. It's so this is what makes me I have to laugh, Della. Otherwise, I'm gonna be really angry. So part of my laughter is to channel my anger and frustration. But when you say Homo economicus, right, and that philosophy and the current economic paradigms, our current debt paradigms, our
Mm.
current like financial paradigms, right, are based in like literally unscientific truths. Like
Yes.
that, the human being is not just, we're literally wired. Let me reframe it. We are wired for altruism. We are wired, like our nervous systems are literally wired to trust each other and to trust even people who are not tribe. Like we're wired actually for that. We're not wired to protect and be in scarcity, you know? So like literally scientifically speaking, like your nervous
Yeah.
system, your hormones, your everything are not wired for the way
Yeah.
that we study economics and like everybody learns economics.
Yeah, and related to that from the folks who are in charge, there's a group of women, and they're the Feminists for an International Gift Economy Network.
Oh my
And they
God.
say something similar where they say we come into the world as babies under the gift paradigm. We are inherently in a gift-giving relationship with our caretakers at a young age. They give to us and we give back, and there's not a sense of exchange. There's more of like mutual gift giving and reciprocity. And then it's the exchange paradigm that we're socialized into. And that's what you're talking about, where if I give you $5,000, what will I get? And it severs the relationship.
Yep.
So, yeah, just that same socialization, we are socialized into the exchange paradigm, which is inherently othering and disconnecting from one
Yeah.
another.
But then you have all these mental health like illnesses and these physical illnesses, and you can see like how we get to where we're at right now because we've disconnected from our literally our birthright.
Yeah.
You know? So, okay, all right. I feel we can riff a long time because we're not even riffing. This is like our like a lot of what we're doing is our life's work. Like this is our life's play, or maybe it doesn't have to be work. It could be life's play. But you know, I do want to like complete this at least this episode with the intention of more of these and more of these also with other members of the Donut Economic Coalition, so people can see and learn from the different perspectives. But also, you know, I encourage people to, we're going to share a bunch of the links so you guys can donate to San Jose Donut, right, project. You could donate to the greater nonprofit. We also I'll put this out there, like as I'm organizing these resilience-based eco-spiritual festivals around the donut and with donut actions, that we also would welcome and participate with folks if they are seeking to build a new donut in their community. And if they do want to kick it off with the festival, that like also brings in the community, like we can be a fiscal sponsor too, if people want to get those donations and we could support those mini circles. Are there any other calls to action, Della, that I'm missing or you want to add?
Yeah, I love all those calls to action, and I would just say if people are feeling a sense of hopelessness or where to put their energy and they're feeling inspired by anything that we shared, there's so many avenues for support, right? Like whether you're someone gifted in the presenting and that element or the data analysis and data collection piece or the like community building and relationship building. Like there's or report writing and social media. Like we are doing so many different elements to really bring this to life. And also there are many ways to do this. Just as we described San Diego and San Jose, it can look different wherever you are. And so whether you're someone in a business organization or you're someone in local government or you're an activist and that's like or a student, right? Like any of those angles,
Mhm.
the donut can be woven in and can be brought to life. So I think just reaching out to us and saying like, how might I partner? How might I get involved is welcome.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. In fact, even if you're an animal or you're a non-human, non-human being, you're also welcome to join the donut movement too, because it's important.
Absolutely.
We also work on creating some healthy donuts out there. So I think there are companies. I think one of the gatherings I organized, we actually had some donuts donated to us that was from a super healthy donut place and gluten free and
Wonderful.
all kinds of stuff. So we're planting that seed, more donuts at our festivals and gatherings as well.
Of course. Yes.
Thank you, Della. I appreciate you so much. You feel complete?
Yeah, I feel complete. And thank you so much for inviting me in this conversation. Good to be in community with you.
Donut.